Okay, so now let's talk about the ending of the episode and what could be next for Strange New Worlds. Now, of course, the first question will be, what will Pike do in that moment? In the end of the episode, we see the Gorn attacking them, and it looks like they're in a situation where if they fought back, they would just be destroyed. Also, I think that they feel like if the Enterprise fires back, that will start a war with the Gorn. Now, we were never told there was a war between the Federation and the Gorn, so he probably doesn't make that choice and start a war here. Also, I think that would be too similar to Discovery because they showed that Burnham was kind of responsible for the Klingon War, and to have Pike responsible for the Gorn War, I think that would be a little bit too repetitive. So in my opinion, he will retreat, and they will make a rescue at some point later. Now, it is interesting that the two officers that were kidnapped, Mbenga and La'an, are the two biggest badasses on the Enterprise. And La'an in particular has experience surviving the Gorn. So I think it's really interesting that those two officers were the two that were picked or whatever to be kidnapped, because those are the two that the Gorn probably did not want to get. Mbenga has the most hand-to-hand kills of any Starfleet officer in history. We learned that this season. So the fact that, he's not armed and he is imprisoned on an alien vessel or whatever will not be a big problem for him, because we know that his weapon, he's a lethal weapon. His hands can do some damage. And La'an, besides being a security officer, besides being a descendant of a genetically enhanced human being, Khan Noonien Singh, she also has experience with the Gorn. Now, it seems like her experience was when she was a child, so the only experience she has as an adult is what we've seen on the Enterprise, and she's done pretty good in those times. I mean, if you remember, in one episode, she helps Spock devise a way to get the Gorn to shoot at each other, and another time she had to, pump herself up to go after the Gorn and stuff like that. So I think really the Gorn kind of messed up by choosing those two officers to kidnap, and I think that they may be a bigger asset than Captain Pike and the Enterprise, because who knows where they're going to be. But Mbenga and La'an are going to be right in the thick of it with all the other prisoners. So I think that that's how the story is going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if the Enterprise is there to save them at the last minute. But I think that the story really is going to be how Mbenga and La'an survive this POW camp or whatever they're put into. So I think it'll be really cool. I'm really excited for it. Another question would be, will the Gorn continue to be, quote unquote, the Borg for Strange New World? I kind of already talked about how the Gorn have been introduced like the Borg this season, and they're kind of used like them. But are they going to continue like that? Because the Gorn, we know that we don't have first contact until the original series in the episode Arena. So to keep fighting against them and to keep using them, it feels like they are going to brush up against canon. And I don't think that you want to change that. You don't want to change something that happened in an episode like Arena because it's such a classic. So I think that the Gorn will be a huge threat at the beginning of season 3, but I think they're going to fade away and they're going to introduce a new villain, because we're already going into the 3rd season and you don't want the Gorn to be the only bad guys that the crew of the Enterprise meet and they have to deal with. I mean, I know they had the pirates and the Orion in the 1st season, but it seems like the Gorn, they keep pushing up against them. So it'd be nice to see like one big battle and then have the Gorn just kind of go away and then have somebody else come forward and be a new villain. I wouldn't mind seeing a brand new villain altogether, although Strange New Worlds has had a lot of success bringing back characters and aliens from Star Trek canon and doing them well. It's probably 60-40 that they'll reintroduce something from Star Trek's past and do that as the new villains for the Enterprise, or they might make something, brand new. But as far as when the Gorn issue will be resolved, it may not be in the 1st episode of the 3rd season, because season 2 showed the audience that we may not get a resolution in the season premiere. Because if you remember, in this season, season 2, we didn't actually deal with Una being taken off the ship until episode 2. Episode 1 had to do with La'an and the Klingons. So it's kind of interesting that maybe the Gorn won't be the focus of the 1st episode, although the way it was left, I know that Pike is going to be really hot about getting his people back and wanting to, save the day. The 1st season, it seemed like we had a lot more scenes with Pike taking chances because he knows his future. And I kind of like to see that return. I don't think we saw that at all in season 2, and that may have something to do with his resolution at the end of season 1 when he met the older version of himself from another reality. But I kind of would like to see Pike take more chances and just be like, I know how I'm going to die. I know that eventually I'm going to be in an accident and be an invalid. But until then, I can be a baller. Like I can do whatever I want because I'm set for that fate. I think that that's kind of interesting, and I would like to see Pike take more chances, and maybe we'll see that in a more wartime like Enterprise. If they're going to war with the Gorn and trying to get their people back, maybe we will see Pike that takes more chances. But even after the Gorn threat is resolved, I think the question that a lot of people will be thinking, who is the next officer from Kirk's Enterprise that will appear on Strange New Worlds? I mean, we already have the members of the main cast, Spock and Uhura, and we have seen now Kirk, and we have now Scotty that's appeared in this episode. It's obvious that we're going to keep getting introduced to these characters. So who do you think will be the next character from Kirk's Enterprise that will appear on Strange New Worlds? So let's go through them real quick. First, there's Sulu. Now, Sulu is interesting because if you bring Sulu on, it may mean that this would mean that Ortegas would probably be not on the show anymore, which would be a shock since it seemed like in season 2, Ortegas got more screen time, and we also learned more about her experience in the Klingon War. But if you remember, in the original series, there was an episode in season 2 called The Deadly Years where they talked about Sulu, and when he joined the Enterprise, he actually was not a helmsman. He worked in the science division. So they could bring Sulu on the Enterprise and not take Ortegas off the ship and just put him in the science division. I'm not sure if they said exactly when Sulu joined the ship. That's the only thing. It's been a while since I watched the original series. I do know that they mentioned and they showed that he first worked in the science division and had like the blue uniform on before he was the helmsman of the Enterprise. So there's kind of a little thing that they could do with Sulu and bring him on the ship and not necessarily take Ortegas off the ship. But because he does take over for Ortegas eventually, I would guess that Sulu will join the cast of Strange New Worlds, but not in the 3rd season. I would like to see him maybe closer to season 6 or season 7 when we're just 1 or 2 years away from meeting James Kirk's Enterprise, because I think that that works the timeline a little bit better. I don't think he was in the Sciences Division that long. So to have him in the Sciences Division for so many years, that would be weird for people because everybody expects Sulu to be driving the ship. You know, he's the pilot. To have him in a blue uniform, it may be too jarring for people to see too many seasons. So that may be like the final season of Strange New Worlds or the second to last season of Strange New Worlds. We'll get Sulu join the Enterprise in the blue uniform, and then eventually he'll take over as helmsman. Now, the next character that we could see is Bones, Dr. McCoy. I know that in the J.J. Abrams universe, they did do an origin for Bones and Kirk. I don't know if that is exactly canon, though, to the original story. So I don't think that Bones necessarily needs to join the Enterprise when Kirk does. But the thing that I think that is most interesting about Bones joining the Enterprise is Nurse Chapel, because they did start the plot line this season that Nurse Chapel is leaving the Enterprise to join a fellowship. Well, if she leaves the Enterprise, that obviously leaves an opening for somebody to join, and why not Leonard McCoy? Now, I know that Mbenga is the chief medical officer, and Bones does become the chief medical officer, but that doesn't kick Dr. Mbenga off the ship. Now, how does that happen? I have a theory about that as well. We've also learned about Dr. Mbenga's violent past, and this season, he actually had a very contentious conversation with Captain Pike after a Klingon dignitary was killed by him, and he claimed self-defense. So I think that not only by having Nurse Chapel leave the Enterprise and do this fellowship, but also now we know about Dr. Mbenga's past, and he's starting to have a contentious relationship with Captain Pike. This leaves the opening for Bones not only to join the ship, but to take over eventually as Chief Medical Officer. So I really think that the storylines are kind of swimming around this. So I think that possibly at the end of next season, because now with this Gorn thing going on, we know that Nurse Chapel is not going to leave the Enterprise right at the beginning of the season. So she might leave towards the middle or the end of the season, and then her replacement could be Leonard McCoy. And I really think that that's how it will work out. And then McCoy will serve on the Enterprise. Something else will happen with Mbenga, and Captain Pike will make the decision to relieve Mbenga of the Chief Medical Officer duty and give it to Bones. But there's also Chekhov. Now, the reason that I don't think Chekhov will appear on Strange New World is because he's 16 years old when he joins the Enterprise. And I think he joins the Enterprise after James Kirk takes over. So right now, I mean, he could be a fetus. I don't even know how old Chekhov is now. He's probably, the oldest he could possibly be is like 10 or 11. And he could be even a lot younger than that. So I don't think there's any way we're going to see Chekhov on Strange New Worlds, unless there's some kind of episode where they go back to Earth or wherever Chekhov is from, and they see a young kid and he's like, "There are the nuclear vessels," or something like that. And they're like, "Oh, funny kid." We all know that that is Chekhov, and he'll eventually like join the Enterprise. Like maybe he sees the Enterprise fly away and he'll be like, "I want to be on that ship one day." You know, maybe we'll get something like that, but I don't think we'll ever see an Officer Chekhov on the Enterprise. But let me know, what do you think of my theories about the future of Strange New Worlds? Who do you think will be the next officer that we see from Kirk's Enterprise appear on the show? And what do you think will happen with the Gorn? Let me know your theories in the comments below. So now I have just a couple of quick stories that came out of the Star Trek convention that was last week. I wonder, did anybody go? If you went to the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, let me know in the comments, because I'm not sure if anybody went to that thing. I mean, from the pictures, it looks like a lot of people went. And the fact that it was in Las Vegas in August, like, kind of turned me off from going, because I didn't want to, melt in the Las Vegas sun. But there were some cool things that came out of it. And these two stories in particular caught my eye. The first came from Star Trek Strange New Worlds co-executive producer Chris Fisher. And he echoed many fans' wishes for the series to have more than 10 episodes and to go for more seasons. Now, of course, being the executive producer of a series, you want it to go for many seasons. But I did think it was very interesting that he mentioned going for more than 10 episodes. I know that that is part of the contention in the strike, that a lot of series are only doing 10 episodes, and that not only limits the kind of money that writers can make, but also limits the kind of money that actors can make. So one of the resolutions that come from the strike may be that we get longer seasons again of series. And if they're going to do that, then definitely do it with Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Because remember, now we don't have as much Star Trek. When Star Trek Strange New Worlds was first launched, we had 5 series going on. I know that 2 are animated, but still 5 series is a lot to kind of coordinate. Now we just have Strange New Worlds. I mean, Star Trek Starfleet Academy is supposed to come out, but they don't even have a writer's room yet because of the strike. And then we have a film, Star Trek Section 31. We still have Lower Decks, but that's really its own self-contained thing, and that seems to be doing fine. And then, of course, Prodigy is going away. So now I think there is more room to make more episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds and produce those, but it really comes down to, what the studio wants. But here is the quote from Chris Fisher about where he thinks Star Trek Strange New Worlds could go in the future. "I think the show has just started. This could be a 10-year show. Everyone who works on it loves making it. Because of COVID, because of the strike, it's taken 4 years to make 20 episodes. So hopefully Paramount Plus is smart and says, hey, let's go make 20 a year. Let's start making this show. This is gold." And I think that's a great point, that it took 4 years to make 20 episodes. I mean, if Star Trek Strange New Worlds is really going to be your flagship product for the Star Trek franchise, you really have to get it out there, and you have to get it out there a lot. And to do 20 episodes over 4 years, that is not a lot. And it's going to take even longer to get season 3 out. So knowing that, maybe they will push it to 20 episodes, because if we don't get, say, a season in 2024, which would be horrible, it would be awesome to get a 20 episode season right at the beginning of 2025. And I think that that's where this guy is thinking. And that's where my head is at too. I think that's a great idea. All in all, it's probably more of a cost-cutting measure, because you only have to plan for one season. Even though it's twice as many episodes, you only have to get the actors in for, that amount of time. And I think it's a lot easier to do. So hopefully now we will get a 20-episode season of Strange New Worlds, because when Star Trek Discovery started, it wasn't 20-plus episodes, but it wasn't 10 episodes either. I think it was like 15 episodes one season, and then maybe 17. And then we had short treks too, which kind of tied into Discovery. So it seemed like a lot more content than we're getting now. And now that really the only live action show that we know is going to be on is Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they could put all that production strength into that, all the writers, all the people that doing the CGI, people building the sets, just get them all working on this one series and make it great, because you do have something great. So it would be nice for that to flourish and not for it to just die, because you're only making 10 episodes every 2 years and people forget about it every time it comes around. I think that this is really smart. I hope that this does lead to Strange New Worlds being 20 episodes in this third season. I don't know if they did announce how many episodes would be in the third season when they announced that it would be made. They have already said that there will be a third season of Strange New Worlds. Maybe we will get the announcement eventually that they are making 20 episodes instead of 10. Of course, they're not going to make any decision like that until the writers and actors strike is over, which looks like could go into not just the fall, but possibly the winter and possibly even 2024. I know I've been giving you guys updates. There isn't really a big update from the last week because nobody's talking. The writers and the actors union are not talking to the producers union, and no headway is being made. So not really good. I hope that it gets resolved soon, but there really is no sign that it will be. So having said that, and knowing that we may not see Strange New Worlds again for, over a year, I do hope that Paramount Plus makes a decision to make more than 10 episodes in the third season. But let me know, what do you think about this? Do you want to see a 20 episode season 3 of Strange New Worlds? Do you think that makes sense, especially since we know it's going to take longer to make that third season because of the strike? Or do you like the current format of Strange New Worlds and it's like self-contained in 10 episodes and it's easy to digest, easy to binge if you want to, and easy to rewatch for sure? But let me know, what do you think about this in regard to the future of Strange New Worlds? And would you like to see more than 10 episodes in a season? And then my last thing that I want to talk about comes from Zachary Quinto. He, of course, played Spock in 3 films for J.J. Abrams. I liked his performance. I do think that I like Ethan Peck more just because it's a different Spock. I mean, Zachary Quinto was definitely channeling Leonard Nimoy with his performance, and he did it with a lot of respect. I mean, Leonard Nimoy was still alive when Zachary Quinto took on the role and even appeared in a couple of movies with him. So I get that. I understand that it's a different performance of Spock, and I think that's what I'm grading it on. I just like this version of Spock with Ethan Peck more because it's new. It feels like I'm learning things about the character that I didn't learn before. Whereas with Zachary Quinto, I was just like, oh, that's really good. Like, he's doing a really good job, but it's a character that I very much recognize. So this quote comes from him, and he was speaking at last week's Star Trek convention in Las Vegas and was asked about the status of Star Trek 4. And what made this interesting is that Ethan Peck was also there on stage with him. So he was kind of talking about Spock with the other Spock and asked, what he thought about Ethan Peck's performance. And this is what he said first about Star Trek 4. I think there's a lot of other stuff, creative things. It's complicated. The fact that anything good gets made is kind of a miracle. I think it's about different people having different agendas and ideas about what it will be. And I don't know if and when it will happen. And if it coalesces again and we come back and we're able to do it, wonderful. If not, we had a great run. So not really an update. I guess he's just saying that he is willing to return, but understands that it probably won't happen. I've spoke before about how I don't think we're ever going to see it again. I think maybe there's a chance we could see Chris Pine return as Kirk if they're doing a movie where they're like passing the torch onto a new cast or something like that. But I don't think that Star Trek needs a film about the Enterprise. Hell, we've already got a show about the Enterprise, so to have a film about it too would be confusing. On that show about the Enterprise, we also have Paul Wesley playing James Kirk, and we have Ethan Peck playing Spock. So to have different actors play the same characters in a film, I think is kind of jarring and disjointed. So I really don't think we need another film in the J.J. Abrams universe. But who knows what the future will bring. And also, Zachary Quinto met Ethan Peck for the first time and had nothing but nice things to say about his take on Spock. He likened the experience of meeting him to when he took on the role after meeting Leonard Nimoy. And this is what Zachary Quinto had to say about Ethan Peck and Strange New Worlds. I just want to say before we finish up how grateful I feel to be here and how I feel like my experience in this world, it's evolved into other iterations and other forums. And to be able to share the stage with the person to whom I'm now passing the mantle to in a lot of ways, who is engaging you in all these stories from the perspective of this character now into the future. It's really exciting. It's really gratifying. You are really a truly wonderful fan base, and I feel heartened and just optimistic. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of ways in which we feel really discouraged about humanity, but this collection of people in this franchise and what it's based on is not one of them. And so I feel really happy to be here with you all. So that's really just a nice statement that I wanted to share. I think that he sounds like a really good guy and that, he really enjoyed his time playing Spock. I know that him and Leonard Nimoy actually became close before Leonard Nimoy passed away. I like that he was very cool about Ethan Peck's take on the character and, not, very Shatnery about it. But let me know, what did you think about Zachary Quinto as Spock? Do you like Ethan Peck more? Do you get that like Ethan Peck is doing a different take, so it's kind of hard to compare when Zachary Quinto is really just doing an impersonation of Leonard Nimoy and Ethan Peck is kind of doing his own thing? But let me know, what do you think about the different Spocks, and will you miss Zachary Quinto playing Spock in the future? Well, that is all I have this week, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you very much for listening. Please remember to hit that like button before you go, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?